soon discovered that Faddy did indeed have contact phone numbers for members of the underworld. They also discovered that on the day of Nisha's murder, he'd been called by a well-known criminal figure.
In Faddy's phone, what became clear was there had been contact on the evening of the murder from a man called Roger Leslie.
Roger Leslie was from Barnet in North London, a drug dealer with links to the doorkeeping business. He was known to the police and matched the description of the well-built black male seen running from Nisha's house on the night she was murdered.
Roger Leslie had weapons convictions, which leads you to think he may be involved in some violence. He was what you may call an enforcer.
Phone records showed that Leslie and Faddy had been in constant contact on the day of the murder, the frequency of calls peaking around the time Nisha was stabbed.
I found that particularly suspicious and formed the opinion that Roger Leslie must be in some way connected with Nisha's attack. There were no other intelligence links between Faddy and Roger Leslie, and so I formed the opinion that perhaps it was Leslie who had gone to their front door, perhaps to collect a debt or something similar.
In early December, police arrested Roger Leslie. DC Paul Webb led the interrogation.
He was a very frightening looking character because he's a very big guy, and with his facial furniture he looked pretty startling, but he was very quietly spoken and very calm in interview. He said that the studs in his face each represented someone who close to him that had been killed, I think was the expression he used.
Throughout the interrogation, Leslie denied all involvement in the killing. But as the interviews dragged on, Nisha's family supplied the police with more information about her husband's suspicious behavior since the murder.
It was little snippets like he'll get a phone call and he'll disappear for about 15-20 minutes so no one could hear his conversation. There was talk about him having received some mobile phone boxes within 3, 4, 5 days after the murder. Someone else mentioned that he had been cutting up SIM cards. Information like this kept coming in.
With their suspicions deepening, police tracked down Faddy's secret phones and trawled through every call he'd made in the 7 months since the murder. On the day back in May, when he'd learnt of the discovery of the murder weapon, police identified a familiar pattern of calls.
Faddy had picked up the phone and rung Roger Leslie a total number of 6 times, and during that period Leslie had rung Faddy up twice. This was obviously the information which was being given to Leslie about the finding of the knife.
Officers now attempted to find out if Leslie's mobile phone could be traced to the Wembley area on the night of the murder. The results, however, placed him miles away. But then police discovered that apart from the calls to and from Faddy, Leslie had also repeatedly called a second mobile phone on the night of the killing.
Not only had Roger Leslie and Faddy been in telephone contact, they're almost mirrored exactly by calls to a telephone owned by a man called Tony Emanuel.
Tony Emanuel was a low-level East End criminal with no known connection to the Wembley area. Phone tracking proved he'd been there on the night Nisha died. With Faddy, Emanuel and Roger Leslie now firmly linked by their phone records, police had proof that despite his alibi, Nisha's husband was in constant touch with known criminals on the night she was murdered. Something he had omitted to tell detectives in any previous meeting.
Why he was holding information back, we didn't know. We don't know whether he'd been threatened, whether he was scared or someone, but he was obviously withholding information from the inquiry.
While officers prepared to question Faddy, they received news of a stunning breakthrough. Emanuel owned a silver Audi A4 saloon.
Our eureka moment was when we found out that Tony Emanuel had had possession of the car which must have been a car that had been captured on CCTV.
Tony Emanuel's Audi A4 was seized and examined. Not only did it have the distinctive roof aerial, one of its back number plate lights was still broken. The police now had the car that had dumped the murder weapon just yards from Nisha's home.
On the 6th of December, we then arrested Tony Emanuel. Emanuel was interviewed over the course of that day and the following 2 days. He maintained he knew nothing about the incident.
With 2 prime suspects in custody, it was now time to formally question Fadi Nasri. Detectives invited him and his solicitor to a make-or-break meeting.
I was feeling quite bullish when I met him. I really thought he would tell us what had happened on that day, why he felt he couldn't tell us up to that point. And perhaps the mystery would really unravel at that time. His reaction astonished me. He burst into tears and sobbed uncontrollably, making comments like, "I know what it's all about, but I can't tell you now." And we sat with him for around about 3 hours, and we got no more out of him than that.
But as Fadi played for time, Tony Emanuel finally revealed all to the police.
He just gave a short, prepared statement saying, yes, he'd been there. He believed at that stage he'd been employed to drive the car while someone else carried out a drugs transaction. He'd remained in the car while someone else had gone to 20 Sudbury Avenue. He named that person as Jason Jones.
Jason Jones, a bouncer and club promoter from Manor Park, northeast London, had a fearsome reputation. For the police, Jones's 75 previous convictions, including several for violence, made him a man capable of murder. He also knew Roger Leslie. Emanuel's testimony now went on to reveal a damning fact. Jones, who perfectly matched the description of the man fleeing the murder scene, had been inside the house that night.
He said that Jason Jones had told him there were piles of money lying around. We knew that was true because we knew Nisha had been counting her takings from a hairdressing business on the settee. That hadn't been released in the press and wasn't widely known.
The police now believed they had the full picture. They suspected that Fadi had paid Roger Leslie to organise the murder of his wife. Leslie, in turn, had hired hitman Jason Jones to do the actual killing, with Emanuel acting as the driver. But one question remained. Why would Fadi want Nisha dead? A forensic trawl through the couple's financial records soon provided an answer.
They did not have credit in their accounts, their cards were heavily overdrawn. We realised that they were paying something in excess of £70,000 or £80,000 in interest alone.
But there was more. Shortly before Nisha's murder, Fadi had insured her life for £350,000. This policy, along with the limo business and the house, meant he stood to make nearly £500,000 from his wife's death. Nine months after the brutal murder of Nisha Patel Nasri, and police were looking for the final evidence to charge her husband Fadi. Detectives focused on the first call he received while driving his friend to play snooker on the night of the killing.
His friend informed us that he said to the person, "I haven't got my book and I can't help you." So he took that to be a phone call about a limousine booking.
But the records showed clearly that the call wasn't from someone inquiring about a limousine. It was from known criminal Roger Leslie. And just seconds earlier, Leslie had received a call from hitman Jason Jones from near the scene of the murder.
When Fadi took that call from Roger Leslie, he was concealing the true purpose of that telephone call, making it seem it was a business call, not the news that the murder of his wife had been carried out.
On the 27th of February 2007, detectives arrested Fadi Nasri for the murder of his wife.